In the name of the Holy and Undivided Trinity, one God. Amen. There's really nothing more biblical than a blind man coming to Jesus for healing, is there? The Gospels are chock full of stories like the one we just heard today, marginalized people suffering from one condition or another, be it leprosy, blindness, undiagnosed bleeding, what have you, something that reduces their dignity and limits their ability to participate fully in society. These people hear about Jesus and approach him with a dangerous mix of fear and hope, begging for the Holy One to restore them to fullness of life. It's a tale as old as time, and on the surface, Bartimaeus' story is no different from the rest. Perhaps that's because what really distinguishes this story is what happens in Mark's Gospel immediately after the passage we just heard. Now, Mark is the shortest by far of all four Gospels, and so Mark doesn't really waste words or include unnecessary details. Mark's story moves swiftly but with purpose. And though Mark's transitions from one event to another can often seem choppy, they're actually extremely purposeful. Think of Mark's Gospel like you're flying Economy Plus, and all you can bring is a carry-on that will fit under the seat. You don't even get an overhead bin bag. There's no space to waste. Everything you bring has to be chosen with great care and arranged with great precision. That's what Mark's Gospel is like. So what happens immediately, a word Mark is very fond of, after Jesus heals Bartimaeus in today's Gospel? The triumphal entry into Jerusalem, Palm Sunday. Jesus wastes no time in moving from this final healing miracle into the city where he will meet his death on the cross. So when we read these two stories together and embrace this rather jarring transition, it sheds a new light on what Jesus is really doing when he restores Bartimaeus' sight. Usually, when we have a biblical healing, we have no idea what happens to the person who is restored to health. Sometimes they go away without even looking back or saying thank you to Jesus. And to the extent that we think about it at all, perhaps we obliquely assume that these healed people go on to live happy, fulfilled lives, perhaps rejoining their families or communities they had been estranged from. But this story is different. Bartimaeus, we're told, directly asks Jesus to restore his sight. He persists even when the crowd tries to silence him. And he moves with incredible enthusiasm. We're told that he springs up, throws off his cloak in his approach to Jesus. Bartimaeus longs to see again, and he is an active participant in his own healing. And that's an important detail, because when the miracle is performed and Bartimaeus' sight is restored, he immediately, there's that word again, follows Jesus on the way. Which, if we follow the arc of the story, means he follows Jesus right into Jerusalem and right to the cross. Whew, out of the frying pan into the fire. Poor Bartimaeus. Talk about faithful discipleship. Perhaps Bartimaeus' cloak, the same one he threw off to get to Jesus unencumbered, was one of the many that in Mark's Gospel the crowds laid at Jesus' feet when he entered Jerusalem. Perhaps, in the words of the old hymn, Bartimaeus was there when they crucified his Lord. So this healing doesn't have a fairy tale ending. Bartimaeus goes straight from blindness to Calvary, and his individual healing is one tiny part of the global redemption that Jesus offers through his death and resurrection. With his restored sight, he sees Jesus for who he really is, and beholds with his own opened eyes the redemption of the world. It probably wasn't super fun for Bartimaeus, though, to go straight from a life of being a blind beggar to watching his miracle worker, the one who healed him, die a gruesome death on a cross, with a tantalizing little gleam of hope sandwiched in between. Couldn't have been an easy path. sight as well. Bartimaeus sees in Jesus not just an itinerant miracle worker, but something deeper. And he accepts not just the gift of healing, but Jesus' outstretched hand, offering him a transformed life. And it makes me wonder, when we cry out to Jesus for mercy, for healing, for the affirmation that we are not alone in our most difficult moments, what is it that we really want? One of the most extraordinary details about this story is that Jesus directly asks Bartimaeus, "What is it that you want me to do for you?" Jesus makes no assumptions. You'd think a blind man would want to see, and in fact he does, but Jesus knows there's something more at stake here. And I wonder if it's because so many people came to him in search of quick fixes, band-aids, easy outs. Restore my sight so that I can go back to the life I had before. Heal my leprosy so that I can rejoin my old community and pretend nothing happened. And Jesus does those things, sure. But what he really longs for all of us, is the kind of transformation we see in Bartimaeus. A complete reorientation of our entire being, a recognition that because we have encountered Christ, everything has changed, and we are no longer the person we were before. It's probably not what most of us are angling for in our day-to-day prayers, but it's always on the table, because that is the kind of God we're dealing with. God offers us mercy and healing so that we, like Bartimaeus, might go with Jesus right to the heart of human suffering and share that same mercy and healing we have received with a world in need. We usually require multiple encounters with Jesus to even hear the true invitation, much less accept it. And that's okay. God is patient and persistent. So I invite you to hear Jesus' question to Bartimaeus addressed directly to you today. What is it that you want Jesus to do for you? What secret longing do you harbor for God within you? What in your own heart is crying out for healing? And perhaps, most importantly, what would happen if you got it?